Happy New Year, first of all. We'll call to order the Finance Committee meeting for January the 3rd, 2017. Item number 1, please.
Consider approval of the Finance Committee minutes of December 6, 2016.
Review of the minutes. Are there any corrections?
Move for approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor James Gully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Cale.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
Item number 1 passed. Item number 2, please.
Consider approval of claims for all city departments 12/1/16 through 12/28/16.
Do we have a report from the Purchasing Committee?
Yes, sir. The purchasing committee met earlier today, and we reviewed the report of claims, and I move for approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the claims. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor James Gully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Cale.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
Item number 2 passed. Item number 3.
Receive report on the cremation garden project at Green Hill Cemetery and to consider approval of the sale of 5.54 acres of real property located at Green Hill Cemetery to the Board of County Commissioners of Muskogee County or take other necessary action.
Mr. Stewart?
I believe Mr. Miller is going to start with this.
Yes, I wanted to update the committee on progress. As you know, a couple of months ago, we had an agenda item very similar to this come up, and we had Regina Martin, the widow of our late cemetery superintendent Vernon Martin, come and speak to us and about not only the cremation garden project but also the land sale at the cemetery. And we listened to what she had to say, and since that time, she and I have had several discussions, and she's talked with Mr. Tucker and several other staff members as well, and she understands how we're going to move forward with the cremation garden project that was near and dear to her and to her late husband. And she also understands the idea of the land transfer and why it needs to happen, and why the city council had instructed us to go ahead and make an agreement with the county for the land transfer. So I wanted to make sure you guys knew that had taken place and that we've addressed those concerns with her. And a lot of what you're about to hear is based on some of those conversations about how we move forward at the cemetery and in the relationship with the county moving forward.
We have been directed, Eric Reeve, our new cemetery superintendent, and myself have been directed to come up with a plan or a proposal on how to move the cremation garden project forward. I want to start by expressing a lot of thanks and gratitude to Councilman Cale, because Eric and I both are not that familiar with the cremation garden nor a columbarium project. So I appreciate the help that he assisted with us. We actually went over and visited with the caretaker of the Park Hill Cemetery in Broken Arrow and looked at a cremation garden and a columbarium project that they just completed. Very nice. We were able to visit with them, and then when we got back to Muskogee, I was actually able to talk with their administrator who actually put the project together, saw how they did it through an RFP program, saw just how they laid out their grounds. We were able to discuss in detail how it was constructed, how they used city forces, and along with a company to come in and put the columbarium together. So we were able to bring all that information back, and Eric and I continued to visit and talk about it and educate ourselves more and more into what a cremation garden would be. We've got a real quick PowerPoint that we put together, and as you can see, the cremation garden is an area that's in the cemetery for the cremation is dedicated as a cremation area with the columbarium on it. The one you're looking at on the screen there is one that is an example of what we're trying to develop. The example is going to really look a whole lot like what we're planning to build. It will have 5 structures, the round one in the middle, and then 4 in a star-shaped pattern alongside of it. One of the things that we discovered over in Broken Arrow is they actually didn't do a concrete pad underneath it. They're going for the more aesthetic grass look with some Zoya grass or something like that, with a more mobile, manageable area that they thought would be. Their city staff actually come in and put the slabs down or the foundations under each one of those to cut the costs, and we looked at that and thought that was a good idea, that we could get that done. We would want to make sure that we did a survey of the area, and, well, we've actually got the area surveyed. I mean, we would want to do a core sample and get a soil sample so we knew just exactly how thick to make the concrete. They went down about 4 feet over there, which was pretty deep, and we may need to do the same. So we got the RFP from them. Prague and Eric have been working together to develop that RFP. We've almost got it ready to go out, and that RFP would consider costs, the company's existence, just the regular criteria that we have in our standard RFPs. We have an area that was already surveyed out at Green Hill Cemetery that's dedicated for the cremation garden. We don't have an exact location, or we don't have an idea on how many different stars or how many different columbarium sets that we want to put in there, but right now it's intended to start with one. And then going back to the columbarium, the one you're looking at has 240 niches, and the niches are the areas in those structures that you actually put your urn. And that one that you're looking at there has 240 plus. Because this is new to us, we don't have a fee set yet, or an appropriate schedule on what the cost would be if you wanted to buy one of these niches. I think Vernon had actually mentioned $895. I know that Broken Arrow's considerably more. I know that they're valued depending on whether it's the top or the bottom, with the top spaces, and this is in Broken Arrow. The way they do theirs, the top is actually more expensive than the ones down on the bottom because of ease of access. But we looked at that. We do have the spot out there located, and Eric and I were going to walk it out next and try to determine exactly where it's going in that area. The project that we put together, we're hoping that we can do it for $60,000. I know Vernon threw a number of $80,000 out at you, but the more that we've studied it, the more that we think we can get this going with 60, and hopefully we can even do it less than that. The funding options that I've discussed with Manager Miller, the land sale could be used for possibly part of that funding, capital improvements, along with the perpetual care fund. It could be a combination of all three of these. I think the intent would be to get it out to proposals, see what the costs come in, and then decide how we're going to fund it. And we would do that when we brought it back to you for approval with a defined funding source. So what we're looking for is to let you receive this report and also authorize us to move forward with the RFP that we put together to go out for a company to assist us with the cremation garden to construct a columbarium project. And Eric and I will answer any of your questions.
I've got a question. Mr. Stewart, do you recollect what the sexton over at Park Grove said that the Tulsa area was doing in cremation, ratio to burial?
No, not exactly, but I've got some literature, and I read that it was up to almost 40% in 2010, and that's some information that Vernon had gathered, but I do not remember the exact number he told us, and I know he did.
Yeah, and I was thinking it was somewhere between 40 and 50%, which amazed me. They're kind of excited. This appears to be more of an investment opportunity in several levels. An investment for the community to have different options, an investment opportunity for the cemetery to bring in some revenue that they wouldn't already bring in. It seems like a pretty neat concept. We learned an awful lot at that trip, and I was pleased to see that both Eric and Mike asked a lot of very, very pertinent questions and made some very pertinent observations, but looked to me like it was a nice setup over there.
We didn't just learn about their columbarium project. We actually kind of did a lot of research on how they do their maintenance and their care and how they do their sets, and it was really informational for me and Eric, I know, because we're both not totally new to the cemetery, but Vernon, we always entrusted him with that care, so it really helped. And again, Councilman Kale, we appreciate that.
Is there any maintenance to one of these, Mike, that you would anticipate in the first 10, 15 years, or you just need to take care of maintenance costs that'd be 20-plus years down the road as the structure may deteriorate?
As we go out for the RFP, that's one of the things that we're looking for is for somebody to help us define what those are going to be. What I saw over there, I didn't see a whole lot of care at all as long as we made sure and worked the areas around the structures themselves so that the mowers wouldn't hit them and ding them. And, you know, just if we did our things up front, there wouldn't be a whole lot of maintenance involved to them. Hope that answered your question.
Okay.
These
just
have
thinking-
about as much maintenance as a monument. It's all
similar.
granite.
Just thinking they're East Coast or whatever, where it's much more prevalent, probably has been doing it a lot longer than we have, and might give us some ideas on
What
potential concerns down the road.
what we saw, and not to toot Mike's horn too much, but he really started quizzing some of the equipment that they used, looked at their facilities, said, hey, this, boy, wouldn't it be neat if we did things that didn't necessarily cost a lot of money, just good ideas, which pleased me to no end. Inside, they use stainless steel parts for screws or latches or locks. The outside to tighten down the little doors are all bronze, and then the rest of this is all granite. I mean,
Virtually maintenance free, really.
yeah.
Is it fabricated on site, or do they
No, it's shipped
build
in.
it and ship it in?
Yeah, it's
Just
shipped
set
in.
it
Yeah,
on
one of the
the-
expenses is going to be a crane to actually set it. So,
So, Mike, just with earthquakes and vandals, are these something when you do the RFP that we consider? I mean,
you know, I asked,
earthquakes we never had to worry too much about, but lately it's becoming more and more prominent.
and you're building something that's supposed to be out there for infinity.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, that's one of the questions I asked, and of
Okay.
course the answer that the sexton over at Broken Arrow gave me, it's like Patrick just said, it's like the monuments that are already constructed there, and we've got a lot of things out at our cemetery that have been there for a long period of time. So we will take that into consideration. That question will be asked, but
And
I think
vandals?
I think it all comes down to that how deep you set that foundation and how you set that on there. Which was kind of interesting. I mean, they'd poured their pads and they'd actually used some plastic grommets and some adherent to set them. They had sealed around them to keep the moisture out. I mean, there's some things that you're going to have to do to answer the mayor's question. Now that I think about it a little more, there's some minor things that you'll have to do, but the structures themselves are maintenance free. As far as the vandals go, that's some that we'll always have problems with, and we just got to keep our cemetery in a secure state. We've got to keep our gates in operation and keep it lit and keep our police department patrolling it. So
Mike, when you come in the National Cemetery at Fort Gibson from the west gate, is that what's being erected there, kind of, I guess you'd say, in the northwest corner of their property?
I'm sorry, I honestly don't know that
I think
answer.
it is. I've been over there, and I'm pretty sure it is.
It's kind of a wall rather than several different structures, but I suspect that it's a similar item.
In our research, this is the trend, and this is the way
yeah.
that we're going with
That
deaths.
was just after a rainstorm.
The way we've got that area laid out. We were looking at the potential of having two of these stars in one in each of one of those individual squares, so 500 plus niches, and then we could expand it as we had to. So it looks like it is the way of the future for cemeteries. I never thought I would understand as much as I do now about a columbarium project. I originally was going to keep to the cremation garden because I could keep that in my mind, but I'm about to figure out a columbarium with Eric's and Councilman Kale's help.
I think that money can be saved. And I think Mike agrees. But after seeing what they've done, I think to put in a nice grassy area, maybe use a durable grass that doesn't let weeds come in or whatever, it will add to the garden effect and save money on concrete, maybe put a little sidewalk, from the road kind of going to the area, but not invest a lot of money in concrete padding like the representation picture we have here. But it was impressive. It was very, very nice.
So again, we're asking for authorization to move forward with the RFP. When we get that back, we'll bring that back to you, and then we'll discuss funding.
Yeah. And well, go ahead.
I think there's kind of two different
Yes.
things here. One of them is the columbarium or cremation garden project, and I'm 100% for this. I mean, this is was really a project of Vernon's and a vision that he had for where we needed to move forward. Then the other one was the sale of the property, and that was one way of potentially funding this vision that Vernon had. And we wanted to work hand in hand with the county in doing this. Nobody on the council or nobody on the county really started the throwing away of trash or the creation of the problem so many years ago, but there's a problem that really devalued the property that's out there now. We started into this agreement with the county through a cooperative effort. We were all I was surprised when we got the evaluation on the property last time. And I know we were kind of criticized for when we didn't act last time. I think we were very wise for not acting last time because we didn't know what that evaluation was going to be, and we needed some time to look at what that evaluation was going to be and how we were going to fund this project because we thought more money was going to come. These are two different things, but they're one and the same because we thought more funding was going to come from the evaluation of that property that could possibly fund this project or this vision of an employee that had served this community tremendous way. And this was a vision that he saw for this community. I'm so thankful for Mike Stewart and the manager working and really making this vision still come true in a way, and all the work that Patrick has put into this too. And it's still the city council and the county working together to try to clean up a mess that was created many, many years ago. And so I'm for the sale of the property. I still think it's a underrated amount, but the mess was created many, many years ago. And now we're just trying to clean up a mess that was many, many years ago. But I think we were wise in what we were doing and taking the time to evaluate that process.
So, Roy, the way I read this, really it says receive report on the cremation garden project. It's not asking for an RFP. So, really,
On the RFP,
all I see is seeing receive a report.
We could still go out for the RFP and not actually have to have the authorization. We just want to make sure that
yeah, I agree. 'Cause
council's in agreement. That's
in the purchasing policy, the
direction.
manager has the authority to
Can we make a motion
Ask
to
those.
approve the sale and to direct staff to move forward with further exploring
do here.
the columbarium project?
Yeah, you can. You've got consider approval of the sale and then taking any other necessary action within the agenda item.
I'd like to
So
make
you're good there.
that motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second on the floor. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
No?
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
Item number 3 passed. Item number 4, please.
Consider approval of awarding erosion repair by the Muskogee Waterworks plant below Fort Gibson Dam in the bid amount of $29,663.80 to Gibson Construction LLC or take other necessary action.
Mr. Stewart?
Yeah, I've got a quick PowerPoint to show you, and these are actual photos from December of 2015 when we had the high water, the flood that was during that period. These pictures were actually taken from the Civil Air Patrol plane. Prague and myself and At the time, the city manager, Mr. Root, went up and flew this over. What I'm trying to show you is the amount of water that was coming through the Fort Gibson Dam, and you can't really see it, but there on the left by that grassy area is actually where our water treatment facility is over there. That's a better picture of it.
Oh, wow.
And you can see just how high that water was and how turbulent it was, and that it was eating away at the land that was right there by the treatment facility. That was a huge concern to us, and that's why we actually flew over there to take a look at it. We were concerned that it was going to get up to our facility, and it's still quite a distance between the edge of that water and our facility. That picture's a little misleading because it was so high in the air, but it still shows you the concern. That water was up and it was eroding away at the land.
Mike, was this picture taken with all gates open at maximum capacity?
Yes.
Okay.
It was doing its thing to the fullest extent.
Okay.
But when we got back and after the waters receded and we saw the amount of erosion in there, it concerned us. And we contacted the Corps of Engineers because this is a land lease that we have with the Corps. This is their property. It's just our facility. So we have a land lease deal, kind of like what we have structured out at Davis, where we own the facility, they own the land. According to the contract documents, and I had Matt and Roy both look at them, because I didn't feel like we were responsible for the erosion. It did turn that that's the way it was termed in the contract, and we were responsible for the repair. So once we saw that and knew that was the issue, Prague and I got with the emergency management director, Mark Bowling, and I'm going to sing his praises just a little bit because he has been a godsend for recovery of funds. We felt like this was part of the damage that was caused by the flooding, and we were wanting to know if FEMA would do some type of reimbursement for the fix to the problem. Well, yes, they would. So we called the Corps of Engineers because this is their waterway, and we had them help us develop the design for the repair. And what we came up with was we'd actually started with a fabric, a fill material, and a 30-inch riprap that would go on top of that to fill in that eroded area. Well, after we got into discussions and got to a bid document, we actually had removed the fabric for fear that the fabric would cause more problems than it would fix, and that we were just going to do a fill material along with that 30-inch riprap. When we got to that point, FEMA was okay with it. They actually were okay with it up to the Corps' projected price of $32,000, and they've actually issued us a check for that $32,000. Because this falls under their small category, that's what we get, 32. It's not anything over and above that. It would have just been out of our pocket. So we put this project out to bid. We had a pre-bid conference, and at the pre-bid conference we had all the contractors that were on your bid tabs. We also had the Corps here. We had Jerry Lawson, who is a contract inspector for us out on the 43rd and 45th, who we've got a contract for minor things also. We had all these at the table or in the room and had the pre-bid. We went out to bid for it. We got 5 bids. Those are in your packet. The low bid is $29,663.80. The company Gibson Construction LLC has been okayed through the Corps of Engineers. They're okay with our bid price. This is under the 32, so we won't be out any money. We won't be out any money for the actual construction project, but we are going to get Mr. Lawson to inspect it, and we anticipate that to cost somewhere between $2,000 and $3,000. Because of the fact that it's all the way over at the Fort Gibson Dam, we want eyes on it as much as we can get. Because it is on Corps of Engineers grounds, there are some real strict safety concerns that have to be adhered to. So that's another reason why we wanted him over there. And because you can't cross the dam with any more than, Prague, help me out, how many tons? 20 tons. And most dump trucks that are going to haul that riprap in are going to be well over the 20 ton. We wanted to make sure we had sight or eyes on the site. So with everything said, We may be out $1,000 to $2,000 possibly. I don't know that we will expend that, but that will come out of the MMA account if it does. And we also got with Roy to make sure that was an appropriate expenditure for the MMA funds, because this is our water treatment facility, and it is the one, and we've got to ensure that it's in good condition and doesn't have any safety factors. So, saying all that, I'll answer any questions. We do recommend approval. Thanks to Prague and Mark Bowling for the assist in getting the funding for working with the Corps, and we recommend approval.
Move for approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I appreciate Mark and Mike and Civil Air Patrol and for them doing what they needed to do where we could get FEMA funding for this, because if they had not done the documentation, the city would have been out $30,000 with not any reimbursements on this. So I appreciate the diligent effort.
Thank you.
All right, roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
Item number 4 passed, and that was our final item.
We'll now call to order the Public Works Committee meeting. Item number 1, Pam.
Consider approval of the Public Works Committee minutes of December 6, 2016.
Any additions, changes?
Move the approval.
Second.
A motion is second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
The motion passes. Item number 2.
Consider a request from the Veterans Administration for the authorization to construct an emergency entrance to the west side of the hospital complex and take any necessary action.
Mr. Miller.
Yes, we've been approached by the VA and the hospital. They would like a new access road on the west side of their hospital complex. They've gone to the park board. The park board has approved working with them on that. They think it's a good idea, but in general, we don't like to sell park property for that purpose. So we want to explore working with them on a cooperative agreement that we could use, work with them for a temporary construction easement and ongoing use and maintenance agreement to see if we can work together for them to accomplish what they're trying to accomplish. What we're asking is to, number one, let you guys know that we're looking at that, and to make sure you know as we move forward that that's the intent, and that get feedback from you at this point.
Okay. So is this just a FYI, or do we need a motion to proceed?
I think what we're looking for is a motion to authorize the manager to negotiate a use agreement with the Veterans Administration to bring back for council approval.
Is this coming off of 48th Street
Mm-hmm.
and that new 17 acres that we acquired a few years ago?
It's to allow them to get up from 48th to take their maintenance vehicles up there, because they're going to be working on a hillside stabilization project.
Okay, it's what I thought it was.
Oh, yeah.
Move for approval.
Second.
A motion second. Any other thoughts, discussion, questions? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
And the motion carries. Item number 3.
Receive report and direct staff for a program for storm drain art or take other necessary action.
Mr. Stewart, I didn't realize you're an artist.
Well, you don't want me painting. I'm going to start off by telling you that this is kind of a sad program for me, because it's the last one Miss Francie is going to help me on. She's retiring at the end of the week, and it's got me sad. But this is her project. As you are aware, most of you, I think all of you, know that we have to do some form of stormwater education, part of our stormwater management program. So as part of the stormwater buy-in for the public and for education, Francie has been looking at different things that different communities do, and one of them is storm drain art. And this is to actually make people very aware that the waters that come from the sky and into our system actually can be contaminated, because they do run straight out to the lakes and rivers. And so this is an educational program. So Francie has gotten with a More Beautiful Muskogee to help sponsor this, and Francie and several of the more beautiful Muskogee members are here, and I'll ask them if they want to say anything here in a minute. But this program is for ages 13 and above, and they may submit original designs that will be painted on storm drains in the Art Depot District. And by the way, we did go down and visit with the Depot District at one of the previous meetings and make them aware of what we're trying to do down there. These are going to be submitted, judged, and winners will actually paint these on the storm drains. Francie, you're welcome to jump in anytime. So, what the intent is that once they judge them and once they find things that will be appropriate to put on these, we're going to paint them on the storm drains, and that's an example of one of them. As you can tell, the water inlet is there, and they can be very creative with these. In the Depot District, if we have to, we'll pour a concrete pad behind the storm drain itself to make a nice place to paint. We also have talked about the fact that we could supply some of that paint material if need be, because that's going to be an inexpensive deal, really, for the educational value that we're going to get out of it. But there's just some different storm drain arts. I kind of like that one.
Are they painted on, Mike, that last a while, or are they painted on just for 90 days kind of thing?
Oh, they'll be there until they start fading, and then we'll just probably have a follow-up program to keep that ongoing to promote that continually. But we'll have to monitor that. I think that's one of the questions I had for Francie was, what type of paint do we need to use, and how do we, do we need to seal it? And also we're aware that, if we seal it, we got to watch out making it too impervious that it becomes a slick spot in a sidewalk. So we're going to be very aware of how we do this.
I would think for continuity, you'd want to supply the paint, possibly.
Yeah, we want it to be definitely a win-win. So we're trying to get the Art Guild to buy in. We've got a more beautiful Muskogee's buy in, the Depot District's buy in. So in saying all that, I'm going to ask Francie to come up and speak to it. I know she doesn't want to, but this is her project, and she needs to get a little bit of the benefit out of it. She's done a great job in putting it together. So,
Well, if I'm thinking correctly, if this is her project, she can't retire till it's finished. Is that right, Mike?
that's absolutely
Is that what that works? Just wondering.
If it continues for several years, how would it?
Yeah.
Would she leave?
That's kind
I'll be down there. I'll be helping to paint. I won't be doing the design, but I'll be down there to paint. But I did in the research ask several artists. They prefer supplying their own supplies. But the concern was with the younger generation needing help with that, and of course we could help them out with that. But most artists want to use their own supplies, is what I have found out. As far as, like Mike had said about the treating it afterwards, we do have to come up with something. I did go to Sherwin-Williams and got some ideas from them on paint and also for the other supplies that we would need. So, but this is a stormwater drain project. I thought, since we have this art district now, that would be a beautiful place to have all this, because we're going to have a lot of people coming down to that district now, and that's going to get the word out. Part of our public education to our citizens. They're going to see that. I already know some of the artists that's wanting to submit their artwork, and they're excited about it.
So, Francis, how many storm drains are you planning on doing? Is it just in the depot and the Katy districts, or
that's there was about 8 that I kind of outlined to do. There's about 20 down there that if we have enough, that would be great if we could do all 20.
Okay.
Enough submittals or enough money?
Pardon me?
Enough artists
Enough
or
artists or enough money?
Enough artists, and money as well, but
Yeah, we have a pretty good budget in our educational part of the stormwater program. So
The city of Guthrie had done some stuff, but I don't know that it may have been done with chalk or something. I don't remember. But you may want to have a conversation with them
right.
about preserving, coating, whatever.
That was Richmond, Virginia, and Montgomery County, and Maryland is a couple of them that I've talked to, and that was their things. They said, and I asked them about graffiti, and they said they have never had any problems with graffiti because it's so beautiful, and but they've had no problems with anything. Eventually, it does start fading out, and they had to come back and recoat it, but that was all.
Yeah, it'll be a learning process. I think we can take what Francie has started here and develop something that is pretty neat and really gets us points for the educational value with our storm management program.
If I'm wondering if each one of these storm drains, it's not a real big area, if we did a light sandblast over the concrete and over the metal storm drain, just enough to knock off the dust and what have you, if it wouldn't make a nice surface that would help the paint adhere and keep, it's not over some oily spot or dust or something, dirt. And if that's the case, I could probably assist in, having 8 or 10 of these kind of done real quick before the artists start their work, if it's helpful.
We'll definitely take that buy-in. And we also thought about, some of the areas down there they don't have a concrete pad behind the curb, so we also thought about going down there and pouring a slab, a predetermined size. But this is something that I wanted to make sure that Francie got to you before she retired, and she's been at me to get this developed and going, and I think it's time we get it going. So.
Since Francie's already up here.
And again, Mayor, this is something that we're developing, so we're still in a learning curve here. We're still going to try to figure out what the best surface is. Is that a concrete deal? We're asking those questions still.
Can I brag on Francie too, since we're kind of doing this bragging deal? The Muskogee 1500 cleanup, Francie has been an absolute key part of that happening the last several years. And maybe I get some of the credit for it. She does all the work. I just get the credit for it because it's on my watch, so to speak. But she is the person that makes it happen. She and Marcia have been outstanding in helping get that going.
We've had a very good team.
We have cleaned up tons of debris and trash from our community. Thank you very much.
The manager and I have been in conversation with Miss Francie to try to keep her helping us during those crucial points this year, and so far we're thinking she's going to help.
Thank you, Francie, so much for all you've done. So, what do you want, Mr. Tucker? Direct staff?
Yes, and it doesn't need to necessarily be by motion if by consensus we want to move forward with it.
Yeah, I think.
Looks exciting to me.
Yeah, what we'll do, we'll bring it back to you when we have a defined area where we're going to put them, and we'll also try to have the defined ones that we're going to use, so you will know exactly where we're putting what we're putting and what we're doing in the depot district, and we'll make sure that we have their buy-in also.
Sounds cool. Item number 4.
Receive report on building code effectiveness grading schedule conducted by the Insurance Services Office.
Mr. Garvin.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, about every 5 years, the Insurance Services Office, ISO, does an evaluation of the City of Muskogee Inspections Department. Once they complete the evaluation, we're given a grade. Grades range from 1 to 10, 1 being the best, 10 being the worst. The grade that the department receives can have an impact on property insurance policies. So I've asked Dan Hurd, supervisor of the inspections department, to give you a quick overview of the evaluation and the grading that the City of Muskogee received.
Dan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Mayor, Manager, Committee. As he said, the Building Code Enforcement Evaluation Report from the ISO, better known as BSEGS. You see the date, that's not a typo. We started this in January of last year under Roy's watch. We waited until now to do this, partly because we wanted something very positive to start the year, but also because we were waiting on the state to adopt the 2015 building codes that really made a difference in our score here. BSEGS or ISO evaluates cities' building code enforcement departments based on a set criteria, like Gary said, from 1 to 10, 1 being the best. the administration of codes, plan review, field inspections, and then these categories are broken into multiple subcategories assigned numerical score weighted for the importance within the overall score. Now, the score ultimately does affect everyone in the community because it affects your insurance rates. And I'll jump right in here. City of Muskogee was given a rating of 4 for 1 and 2 family and a 4 for all other construction. Compared to other cities in Oklahoma, we were 10.4 points above the state average in residential and 9.6 points above the state average in all other construction. There were only 2 other cities in Oklahoma that scored higher than our 4. So to keep patting people on the back, our guys did a really good job here.
And Gary, let me ask, Dan, let me ask this question. A higher score is good or a lower score is good?
The lower the score, the better.
Yeah,
Okay.
1 is the best.
1 being the best.
It's
Okay.
very similar to the
To
fire
the
department.
fire rating.
The
Yeah,
fire
okay.
department, the ISO. This is
Okay.
actually the same
Same
insurance
group of
service.
people.
Yeah.
So when we say they scored higher than a 4, we mean they scored better than a 4.
Than a 4.
Yes.
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 To clarify.
Okay, that was a little confusing.
Now, that being said, that makes us 3rd in the state of Oklahoma, which is pretty awesome for a little city like Muskogee. But we looked at this, we went over it with Roy under his watch back last February, and we identified some locations where we could make some changes to do better in the next 5-year period. And that's kind of what I'm going to show you next.
Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't they send us a preliminary,
Yes,
here's
they
what it's
did.
going to be? And we
Yes.
were docked
We
because
were.
the state had not adopted the most recent building code. And so
Absolutely.
under the new law that passed about 2014, we were obligated to follow whatever the state had.
Correct.
And so we began to discuss with them why that was
Right.
maybe
Which
not a fair criteria to hold against us.
They did give us the year to get that in place, which the state already had it in line to do in November of last year. Again, that's why the delay. That's why this shows 2016 and we're now in 2017. We noticed this right off the bat. We scored very well in certification, but yet in training, we came in a little low. Well, after discussing this with Roy, we dug a little deeper, and the training budget was required to be 2% minimum of our overall operating budget. At that time, we were at 1.25% of our overall operating budget. We did adjust that in our current year's budget so that we could gain some more points back here to get us to where we wanted to be. Now, what we didn't know at that time was training was required in 3 different categories: administration of codes, legal aspects, and technical. And when we looked at this, we saw 3/4 credit. Our guys do 40 to 48 hours of training every year in the technical and technology portion of the codes. They require 60 hours in technical. They require another 12 in legal and another 12 in administration of codes. That's why we didn't get any credit there, because it's just not available right now in the state of Oklahoma. We would have to travel. Takes us back to that budget. Without the budget money, we can't travel to go do that training. We've adjusted that, and we should be able to get most of it now. We will be making some more incremental changes as we go forward, but that's for another day. They also require incentives by the jurisdiction for continuing education. We get partial credit there because we pay for the licensing, we pay for the continuing education. But what we don't have is an incentive in place for the employees like myself to go forward and get more training, get more certifications. And they would like to see something in that nature. When you get into certifications, we got full credit for the certifications we have because everybody we have is certified, whether it be plumbing, electric, mechanical, or building. Each one of us is certified in those categories, some of us in multiples like myself. Certification maintenance, we got partial credit. Goes back to that training. We just didn't have quite enough. Certification required prior to employment. We got partial credit there. Plumbing, electric, mechanical, they're all required to be licensed journeymen before they ever become inspectors. General contractors are not, and there is no licensing in the state of Oklahoma at this time for general contractors. That being said, you guys as a group can lobby OML and the OUBCC for that to get general contractors licensed, which would be a good thing for our city and for our state in general. So that's something to think about, but there are points available there if we do. Code-related education required as a prerequisite to testing. It is not. We do not require it as a prerequisite. They do. They would like to see us have the training prior to testing for these things. For the most part, like myself, we bought the training materials, we got the study guides, we've got the code books. Here you go. Learn it. Most of us had to do it that way, the hard way. They would like to see us do it a little easier way. Not a lot of points there to be had, but if you look at the overall, there are about 9 points available. Remember that number 9, because I'm going to come back to it in a few minutes. When you get into the plan review portion, existing staff, we only got a very small portion of the credit because I do carry a certification as a plans reviewer, but they require it to be an architect or an engineer. They want our plans reviewer to be an architect or an engineer. That's going to be a reoccurring theme in here is they want licensed people as engineers or architects. They want design professionals doing this. It's not required. It's not required by the state. It's not required by many states that I know of, but they do. That's how you get the best score. Experience of personnel, we got 135 out of a possible 1.5. Very good. That's going to be fluid as you go through time. You're going to have people retire. We had 2 retirements just a few years ago, so we had a few younger employees there, or younger in terms of time in service. Detail of plan review, they gave us a 9.5 out of 11. They loved what we're doing. It's not done by an architect or an engineer. They'd love to see it. That's what they require. Performance evaluations for quality assurance, we get partial credit because it's not done by an architect or an engineer. Now, we are working on a plan now. Gary and Mike are going to be sitting down talking about this later to kind of get our engineering department a little more involved here to try and bias some of these points. The last section, field inspections, we got 9 of 9 in commercial for staffing, and that's based solely on the number of inspections each inspector does, 7.21 out of 9. Don't jump off a cliff on that one because one large project like the HP homes down here on the south side of town, that was 28 homes, an average of about 20 inspections each. That's over 560 inspections just in that one little area in a very short time frame. Can skew those numbers. So we're staffed about where we need to be, but a large project like that can affect it really quickly in something like this. The experience of the staff, we got 2.4 out of 3. Again, they go back to that 5-year minimum requirement for what they want to see on their inspectors. They want to see each inspector with at least 5 years of experience. Again, we had some retirements, and I'm afraid that number is always going to be fluid. As long as you go forward with that, it's going to be fluid. People are going to retire. People are going to come and go. The inspection checklist, had we known going in that they required the ICC checklist, we'd have changed. It does cost. It's about $150 once every 3 years. That's why we never did do it. We already had a checklist. We've been using it since the day I got here in 2004. They require the ICC. There's a half a point we can buy right there, very simply. Special inspections, 0.8 out of a possible 1. This one, we're probably good to stay right where we are because the more inspections or the more special inspections you require, whether it be soils testing, engineers reports, that costs the developer time, the builder time, costs us time. We're going to need more valuable staff to deal with that. It's kind of a point of diminishing returns. We're probably best to stay right there where we are and not press that issue. Performance evaluations for quality assurance, again, we get half credit because they want those done by an architect or an engineer. Our final score was a 72.94 in commercial, 70.11 in residential. As you can see, we were just a little over 4 points away from a 3 in the commercial and 6.8 away from a 3 in residential. That gets back to that 9 points I was talking about. We buy that 9 points, we're a 3. Couple points here and there along the way, we're a 2. We can be the best given the opportunity. This is just the classification table that they work with. As you can see, we're pretty solidly right there in the middle of the 4. But 12 to 14 points, we can be a 2. Now, that all being said, at what cost? And that's where this comes in. The ISO score is used primarily in underwriting and is one of many variables used for setting base insurance rates as only one of the criteria a 1 or 2 point increase or decrease would have very little impact on the community, either up or down. I did talk to somebody in the insurance industry about how this is used in underwriting, and he said a point is going to buy you at maximum 2%. If your score goes up as the city, your insurance rate could go down up to 2%, but that is just one variable in that. Same thing going down. A very low score, an 8 or below, could negatively impact the base insurance rate, but not as significantly or as abruptly as a natural disaster. You have a big ice storm, you're going to see it in your next cycle. The next time your insurance comes around, it's going to go up. We've all seen it. A score of 1 or 2 would have a little impact on our current rates due to our current score and the other variable factors in the equation. That 3 to 4 points, we could go up. At best, we could see a 6% decrease in our insurance rates if we were able to do that as a community. Going the other direction, if our score went down, if we got below the 8, it could make a significant impact on our insurance rates, but you're still looking at about 2% per point as you go down until you get there.
Do I understand it right? 2% of the gross paid within the community?
Well,
Which would
2%
be
of your individual.
literally millions of
Your
dollars.
individual
could.
insurance policy.
Your individual
would be based-
insurance policy.
Yeah.
Is the way I understood it.
But if you took, what's our total number of residential structures?
Yeah, it could- It
15,000?
could be a large
15,000.
amount if you
Yeah,
take the entire
2%
community.
of that
Yeah.
number would be a big number.
Yeah.
Yes, it
Large
could be.
financially.
But I mean, as far as to the individual, you might be talking, I don't know what your homeowner's insurance is, but for mine, I'd be looking at maybe $20 a year on a best case scenario that I could save or cost myself in a 2% increase or decrease.
And this is evaluated every 5 years, so we have a
Right.
5-year period here to make some changes. And
Right.
we're working on some plans to try to get increase to 3, possibly a 2. Some things are not feasible. It's probably not feasible for us to hire a professional engineer or an architect on staff.
Right, as a plans reviewer.
But
Can
there
it
is
be a
other things that
consultant?
we could do.
Yeah.
Can it be a consulting contract?
We could
It could be.
ultimately do it that way, but again, what the cost
Yeah.
could be detrimental.
I think that was one of the things that you guys were investigating in
Yes.
the future.
Yes.
Yeah.
We can go several different ways. The end result, though, being a 4, puts us top 3 in the state. So,
Which we're very proud of.
yeah,
Very good.
something to look good.
Any other questions?
Any more questions?
If not, we'll move to item number 5.
I wonder why they don't do fire and building at the same time, same staff?
I don't know. It's
When we do
different
the-
years.
Yeah, I mean, it's like 2 years ago or something we did the fire.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, interesting.
All right. Any other comments? Item number 5, Pam.
Consider approval of the appointment of Dennis Wilhite to the War Memorial Trust Authority to serve a 3-year term beginning on January 1st, 2017 and ending on December 31st, 2020, replacing Kathy Hammonds, or take other necessary action.
Mr. Van.
This is my appointment, Mr. Dennis Wilhite, to the War Memorial Trust Authority. I think he'll be a great asset, Mr. Gully.
Okay.
Mr. Dennis Wilhite, he's the type of person, once he gets started at something, he don't finish. He's just a hard worker. Matter of fact, he was very instrumental at the Booker T Cemetery when we cleaned it up, and he found the Tuskegee Airmen out there, and we went to Oklahoma City, and he received the Congressional Medal of Honor, that Tuskegee Airmen. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's out there at the Memorial right now.
It is.
So I would like for the committee to approve this, and Mr. Will actually will accept it.
Is that your motion?
That's my motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor James Gully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
And the motion carries. Seeing that no one has signed up to address this committee, we are adjourned.
We'll now go to our agenda for the special call, Muskogee City Council. Roll call, please.
Mayor Bob Coburn.
Here.
Deputy Mayor James Gully.
Here.
Dan Hall.
Here.
Marlon Coleman.
Here.
Janie Boydston.
Here.
Wayne Johnson.
Here.
Patrick Kale.
Here.
Ivory Van.
Here.
Derek Reed.
Here.
Item number 1.
Consider approval of a resolution approving the incurrence of indebtedness by the City of Muskogee Urban Renewal Authority issuing an amended note Series 2015-A in the aggregate principal amount of $5,500,000 to acquire certain necessary real property in the urban renewal area, subject to the note indenture and loan agreement, waiving competitive bidding and authorizing the execution of a note, securing the same to be repaid in and from the sale of same property and/or proceeds from a tax increment district in the area not otherwise pledged, authorizing the same to be sold directly to the City of Muskogee Foundation, and granting authority to the mayor for non-substantive amendments, authorizing the issuance and securing the payment of the note, providing that the organizational document creating the authority is subject to the provisions of the indenture, authorizing and directing the execution of other documents relating to the transaction, or take other necessary action.
Mr. Miller.
Yes, as the committee, I'm sure, recalls, in the urban renewal area, we had originally been authorized to indebtedness of more than $16 million to be financed with the TIF proceeds. Earlier this year, we did. Our first chunk of money was a little bit over $10 million earlier this year, or I guess now that it's 17. And late last year, you authorized us to go get the remaining amount of money, and we've done that in increments. And this increment was a $1.5 million for land acquisition, and we still have additional funds that are available for infrastructure within the urban renewal area. The City of Muskogee Foundation has agreed to loan us that money, and they would like to combine it with an existing $4 million loan that they've already made to us. That is why it's a $5.5 million note that you have. It's really combining the existing loan and the new $1.5 million for land acquisition. What this would do is allow us to continue acquiring property in the urban renewal area, which is essential as we move forward with economic development projects, that we have large contiguous plots of land for developers to use, and that really fulfills the purpose of the URA. And so I would suggest, I'd be happy to answer any questions. We have the note for you to look at. The terms are very similar to the terms of the note that we had prior, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So for clarity purposes, we're only asking for an additional $1.5 million.
Yes,
that's correct.
But what we're doing is simply amending the $4 million note that pre-exists. When we had meetings with the foundation, they suggested that would be the most convenient and easy way to do that. And one of the things I do want to add is we had a late meeting with the chairman of the foundation and the executive director, as well as their attorney, earlier at 2 o'clock today. And so they did recommend some changes to make them feel more comfortable about the wording of the resolution. And so I have prepared a red line copy of that I have set in front of you. And just to briefly, if no one minds, Mayor, to go through some of the revisions that have been recommended. One of the recommendations was from their council. We had previously had the $4 million loan that was secured primarily with land, the proceeds from land sales, and also from the TIF revenues. And so we have worked on a number of development deals where we have used some of the cost of the land as an incentive to attract developers. And so in this amended resolution, we wanted to strike that out as a required repayment. Because if you look at the total amount that was authorized by the TIF, the $4 million that was already established was essentially double collateral. They had collateral on the land as well as the TIF revenue. And so what we're essentially doing now is removing the collateral on the land. Obviously, when we sell land, it is up to the Urban Renewal Authority to utilize that money to pay back the loan, because this is actually the Urban Renewal Authority is the actual entity that is taking on the debt. What this does today is just the City Council is required to authorize that indebtedness. So it's not the city's going into debt, it's just approving the Urban Renewal Authority going into debt. They have not approved this they won't approve this until tomorrow. So if we do approve this, it would be subject to ultimately their approval as well. Going through the changes, I'd mentioned that this is we've modified it to include language that it specifies that it is unsecured. Secondly, we have articulated that it is used to acquire necessary real property. and other project costs as defined by the loan agreement. And those costs include financing, interest payments, and all those other type of things. The members of the group that we met with just felt that that made it a little bit more comfortable for them. Additionally, I have included a provision in Section 1 which articulates what the interest rate was. I noticed that that was not in the resolution, and as Mike said, the interest rate has not changed, but nonetheless, it's always good to have it articulated within the resolution, just for clarity and any future review. Finally, we are still making minor changes to the loan agreement and the note. And so what this resolution would do would authorize the executive director of the Urban Renewal Authority, the city manager of the city, as well as the chairman and the executive director, to approve ultimately that loan agreement, the modifications to the existing loan agreement, subject to legal approval from me as well as Mr. Wright, who is the foundation's attorney. Finally, there was a reference in here to the interlocal agreement with the Board of County Commissioners. That was simply a Scrivener's error, so that has been removed. And finally, we have also, and this was a request of the foundation, included language that will affirm the good faith obligation, since the city can't be indebted beyond the fiscal year, its good faith obligation to ensure that all TIF revenues are appropriately apportioned to the Urban Renewal Authority to pay back the terms of the note. So with that, I would ask that you move approval of the amended resolution as presented, subject to approval of the Urban Renewal Authority. Happy to answer any questions.
So move for approval.
Second?
Motion and a second. Is there comment or question? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed. Dan Hall.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes, motion carries. Item 2A and B.
Consider approval of an executive session to discuss and take possible action on the following. Pursuant to Section 307B4, Title 25 Oklahoma statutes, consider convening an executive session to discuss the potential settlement and/or the appointment of a settlement representative involving a Muskogee District Court case titled Don Younger versus Muskogee Police Department, case number CJ-15-478, and take appropriate action in open session. B, pursuant to Section 307C10, Title 25 Oklahoma statutes, consider convening an executive session to discuss an economic development project in downtown Muskogee, and if necessary, take appropriate action in open session.
Entertain a motion to go into executive session.
So move.
Second?
Got a motion and a second. Any comments? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes, motion carries. We will now consider ourselves in executive session. We'll now reconvene from executive session. Roll call, please.
Mayor Bob Coburn.
Here.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Here.
Dan Hall.
Present.
Marlon Coleman.
Here.
Janie Boydston.
Here.
Wayne Johnson.
Here.
Patrick Kale.
Here.
Ivory Van.
Here.
Derek Reed.
Here.
Mr. Tucker, 2A, please.
Pursuant to Section 307B4, Title 25 Oklahoma statutes, the City Council did convene an executive session for the purpose of appointment of a fully authorized settlement representative. After discussing the issue at hand, I believe it'd be appropriate to have a motion to appoint Mayor Coburn as a fully authorized settlement representative, with Janie Boydston as the alternative settlement representative in the Muskogee District Court, or in the Eastern District Court case, Donald Younger versus Muskogee Police Department, case number CJ-15-478.
So moved.
Second?
Got a motion and a second. Is there any comment or discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes, motion carries. Item 2B.
Pursuant to Section 307C10, Title 25 Oklahoma statutes, the council did convene an executive session to discuss an economic development project downtown. After fully being briefed on the status of that project, I believe it's appropriate that a motion be made to move the approval and authorization from, move to approve an economic development agreement by and between the Muskogee Brewery Company, LLC, and the City of Muskogee, further authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute the same.
So move.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any comment or discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor James Gully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes. I thought maybe we were supposed to hesitate when we said yes. Motion carries. And that concludes our agenda for today. Thank you for joining us for this meeting.